Anyway, Amanda, your call.
Okay, yeah, well, three things I'd like to say, or 3 points I'd like to make, really. First of all, I would just like to say that I absolutely agree with everything that Rafe said to you when you were speaking with him just before the break. I think he always has his finger on the pulse, and he is extremely astute when it comes to the problems that this country is facing. The woke agenda most definitely is destroying everything in this country, and the one thing that the Conservative government could have done to save their skin, basically, would have been to get hold of the woke agenda before it's too late, but they haven't done that.
But how much, Amanda? Because, you know, that's a hell of a statement to say it's everything. I could agree with you about so many things. I think it's influencing education. You know, we could just go on. But if I said to you, what is the one thing the Conservatives should have done? Because they would never tackle it all. But is there something on that woke agenda that you feel is so critical, should be tossed out?
Well, the thing is, it's causing what I call a contagion of inversion of the truth, because everything is upside down, and it's being reflected in these marches, these pro-Palestine marches, because basically people, I think, have become a little bit brainwashed about what is right and what is wrong. Because when you look at the situation in Israel, let's just take a step back here and ask ourselves, who started it? It was Hamas.
It's like we're attacking the victims of the assault.
Exactly. That's inversion of what reality is. And it's the same thing with the woke agenda. And may I just say, with regards to the police, first of all, I agree wholeheartedly with everything Suella Braverman said. I think she most definitely speaks for the silent majority in this country. She is getting, vilified for speaking the truth, basically, and we need more of the truth in this country, because the woke agenda is the complete obliteration of the truth in society. But do you think that's why we're in such a terrible state?
Do you think, Amanda, though, that whilst you applaud what she has said and her candour about it, it's absolutely right to point out that her and her party have been in power for 13 years and they haven't... Yes. They've kind of created the problem they say they're now going to fix, or she says she's going to fix.
Yeah, I agree with you, Nick, there. But I think the problem is, I think she is somewhat restricted by what she can and can't do behind the scenes. I don't think she's allowed to have as much of a power to do the things she would like to do.
Well, every policy...
that we think.
Every policy, you may not know this, every policy, doesn't matter whether it comes from the Chancellor or the Home Secretary, has to be approved by number 10. So the only people blocking it would be number 10.
Exactly. And Rishi Sunak, if you don't mind me saying, is a very, very weak leader. He is not a real leader for times such as this. And the last point I wanted to make, because I know you have to move on quickly, but with regards to the pro-Palestine marches, the problem we have in London, and this is nothing to do with racism or anything else, it's very simple. We have a Muslim mayor, and that is all anybody needs to know about the pro-Palestine marches and the way they are being policed. It is favouritism and bias on behalf of the police because they answer to a Muslim mayor. And what makes me most upset in this country is that our capital has been taken over by that particular portion of the population.
Well, and when you say taken over, what do you mean? Because that's, again, quite a sweeping statement. Just on the police thing, by the way, the mayor today is complaining about Suella Braverman intervening on operational matters. He has a huge track record of intervening on operational records. But back to my main point, what do you mean taken over? Because I don't think it's been taken over. I think institutions tread very, very warily around certain different communities, different groups, including Muslim groups and certain mosques. But I don't buy the idea it's been taken over.
Well, the problem with the Muslim population is their ideology and their religion is such that they actually do want to take over. If you look at their religion and their ideology, that is what they are...
But they're not in charge.
That is what they're encouraged to do. And their own religion tells them to go forth and multiply so that they can become the majority. But
the point is, London has not been taken over. That's what I would say, whatever people believe about their intent.
It feels that way this weekend, though, Nick. It certainly feels that way way to a lot of British people, and that's why a lot of British people are so upset, because it feels as if our capital city no longer belongs to the British people, and that's not right.
Amanda, I think, and Amanda, I can sense how strongly you feel about this, and you always present your case very passionately. Thank you for that, and it is only for time reasons, because we tend to pile in at every opportunity. Not sure they've got that quite right, myself, but you share with me what you think. Let's go to Kathleen in Antrim. Hello, Kathleen.
Hello.
Welcome, and thank you for calling.
Right, you're all right.
What would you like to say?
I believe she's completely right, because
Suella, that is.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm one of the silent majority. I've never phoned into a TV programme before in my life.
Well, thank you.
I've feel strongly because my grandparents, most of my family were in the First World War and Second, and I myself served in the forces, and never is the silent majority ever heard unless they take up arms. And I think it's totally, totally wrong. I believe the silent majority has to be heard. The only way that we have to do is now to speak. I think she's totally right. The silent majority in this country at the minute are not getting heard.
Do you think, and this is just a point I'm toying with, Kathleen, do you think actually if a politician says something that you feel no other politician is addressing but speaks to you, a silent majority, if you like, that helps you? It kind of eases, if you like, the frustration you might be feeling. Do you take a sigh of relief and say, at last, someone's listening?
Well, I think everybody's listening, but nobody's being brave enough to say it. I do believe that our Prime Minister is hemming and hawing. He won't back her and he won't fire her. And he has got no backbone. I think somebody has to speak up for the silent majority. Nobody is doing it.
And what would you do if he fired her?
I believe there is politicians there, but they're not speaking.
But how would you feel? And I don't mean in terms of votes. I think that's a fairly predictable conversation. How would you feel, though, if the Prime Minister says, I'm sorry, you don't speak for us, and you're fired? To Suella.
Who's he saying you don't speak for us?
Well,
he's speaking for
him. He would say that. I think that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. He's not saying what he wants her to say.
I mean,
you say speaking for the public.
Do you feel? Just one final question, really.
Okay.
Do you feel that actually, despite what Suella has said, that she thinks the British police are biased, do you have any confidence that things will change after this weekend?
No. No, I've been in London on shopping times, and 20 years ago I heard the Palestinian march then, and they were speaking about something against the Jewish religion in Israel. I'll not forget that. My daughter couldn't get me away quick enough because I was inclined to say, not on. But nobody seems to listen. And I do believe there is a silent majority out there who believes that we have a great country. We have a really good country. But the Palestinian protesters are taking it over. The silent majority don't have a say. We don't march.
John, hello. Thanks for calling.
Thank you so much for taking my call.
Far away.
Mine's a simple call. I believe we could protest on all that.
Yeah.
But there's, I don't know, is it 200,000 people in London today?
I honestly don't know what the figure is. The police didn't even put a number on it when they gave a statement, but it's in tens of thousands for sure.
Right. So, where are they going to go and relieve themselves?
I have no idea. Hopefully not in the streets. And I think, actually, what I will say is I think if they stick to the organised routes, whatever march it is, that is taken into account. So, but I can't tell you any more than that.
But that's an offence in itself.
Well, if they just go on the streets, it is. You're right. Yeah.
And I think it's outrageous. I'm sure tomorrow morning, Monday morning, that a lot of the shops will be cleaning up everywhere.
Quite possibly. There will be things like that from any march, to be fair, that happens. But, yeah, you raised the point. John, in Manchester, you raised the point I hadn't thought of. Thank you very much for doing that. Go and take Anne-Marie from Lanarkshire. Hello, Anne-Marie.
Hello. Listen, I think time and again the media try to bring down government ministers by hounding them on every outlet possible, making it impossible to govern this country. I think this is a serious issue. They've hounded her over immigration, over the tents, over everything she's attempted to do. She's been stopped by left-wing lawyers. She's been stopped by courts. Everything she's attempted to do.
Well, so was Priti Patel.
Yes. The country want.
Yep.
She has been stopped. But I would also like to point out that Sadiq Khan was conspicuous by silence, and I think Suella Braverman had to step in there, and had he filled that gap, she wouldn't have had to, and there wouldn't be a ring of steel round the cenotaph today had she not intervened.
Well, I think you've made your points very well, Anne-Marie. I don't believe this station for 1 minute, this channel for 1 minute, is a part of that, if you like, attempting to bring a government down, but we do play our part if they go wrong. But I think I'm asking the very question to try and encourage those who think they don't have voice to say whether they support her or not.
I absolutely agree with you, and I listen to your station all the time, and
Good.
I always think your presenters are very fair-handed. I am not speaking to you.
Fine.
I'm speaking to the papers who make money out of
course,
lines. I really, that's, and all the other left-wingers that is now taking control of our country, and they know that she doesn't want to, she's been fighting these left-wingers, or whatever you call
well,
them.
they're in the Home Office, some of them. I mean, they actually work for her, who try and undermine her plans. They took her to court. I know.
The fact that the Home Office said that she wasn't to do that, the Minister said that she wasn't to do that. I thought they had the Secrecy Act, that they signed a secrecy.
Well, I think it's the union. Correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm sure you will out there, but I think the union, one of the unions that represents some of the senior staff in the Home Office, are actually taking them to court, the Home Office, i.e. the Home Secretary, to court over a policy that they're paid to implement. I mean, that is how bonkers it has got.
Well, how has it got like this?
Well, it's because we've allowed the courts their independence, and I approve of that. The courts should be independent of politicians, and of course lawyers will exploit and take advantage of the law, not even exploit, take advantage of the law if it's to stop the government's policies.
That's now putting courts in charge of our government. That's bad for democracy.
Well, we can pass laws.
Serious. And I wish the newspapers would be paying attention to that. And trying to hound ministers out of government is a sport. And that's what I'd like to say, and thank you for listening.
Not at all. Very well put. Thanks, Anne-Marie. Let's John in Durham. Hello, John.
Hello, Mary. All right?
I'm very well indeed. What would you like to say, John?
Well, I'll tell you something. Suella Braverman.
Yes.
She has given the best speech for working class people in this country.
You're talking about the article she wrote, are you, where she... you are.
Why not, right? Because Richie Sunak... Hey, listen.
Yeah, I'm listening very carefully.
Richie Sunak hasn't got the balls to go and say she said exactly what to do. And everything that Suella Braverman said is spot on. But you've got Richie Sunak who won't come out with batter.
Do you think, John, just ask you a question. I'm not saying I even believe this myself, but there's part of me that wonders the reason she hasn't been fired is that he thinks it's okay for her to say these things because he really thinks them but doesn't think a Prime Minister should say them. Is that just me stretching it too much?
You stretch it, right? The simple reason is that the day she said it, Richie Sunak won't come out and say she's right, and then you got the Labour left who comes out and want the sacks. All them people, all them young lads who went to with the FLA and the ADL went to that thing today, and I tell you now, whether tomorrow the newspapers, and on Monday, it'll be all Patriots' fault.
It will be, and they were very stupid to do that because they've just given licence to this argument that the far right were there, and they weren't all far right, just as all the demonstrators on the Palestinian march are not Hamas supporters. There will be some. It's simple as Durham. John in Durham, thank you for that call. We've got time to go to Sue in Shropshire. Hello, Sue.
Hello.
Hi.
Good evening. I fully support Suella Braverman. I think she speaks for the silent majority, of which I am one. I am not on social media, I'm ancient, but I'm one of the old-style people who are listening. We are listening and watching to what this current government are doing. We heard prophetic voices in the past, and Mr Sunak needs to be very careful that he pays attention to this huge majority that gave Brexit a vote and has largely been opposed by the opposition. Heaven help us if Labour gets into government.
Well, it looks very likely that they will. It looks very likely they will.
Nothing yet. Should that happen, because I am a disaffected Conservative, I lived in great hope, which has been dashed at every turn because backbone isn't the thing I think they're lacking, but it is on television, so I won't say what I think they're lacking, but they are lacking backbone. They are not prepared to stand up for what this country stands for.
And what do you think it stands for? How would you summarise it?
It stands for truth, for justice, for what is right, for the little man, for the disaffected, for the veterans on the streets, for old ladies giving up their dogs because they can't afford to pay for their pet food anymore. That's what we stand for. That's what we always stood for. That's what my husband's family, who were Gordon Highlanders, that's what my family, who were First and Second World War veterans, that's what we fought for. And today's demonstration, although I believe in free speech, today's demonstration is just an illustration of how we have lacking integration and cultural acceptance in this country.
And no tolerance, Sue, because part of me is if multiculturalism, which I think was successful many years ago, I think there's a huge tribute to be paid to particularly to the Black Caribbeans who came over and rebuilt this country after the war, people like that. But now what has happened in recent times is that you've effectively seen a prioritisation that has led to no common belief that, you know, this is a country to be proud to be brought up in, a belief in this country, the common thread that binds us together. And what you've ended up with, of course, is a lack of tolerance now. But listen, beautifully put. Thank you, Sue. Let's go to Neil in Oxford. Hello, Neil.
Hello, Nick. Good evening.
Good evening. Thanks for joining me, and far away.
Well, first of all, I wanted to just respond to Suella Braverman's, how she's responding to the protest march, how she has been responding to the protest march. And there's concern about overgeneralization of the protest march attendees who are going to the protest march. Now, let's have it quite clear. The protest march that we have been seeing has got different groups. It has pro-peace marchers who want peace in Israel and with the Palestinian people. We have got pro-Palestinian marchers who do not want innocent Palestinian lives to be killed. And we have pro-Hamas supporters in these marches as well. So it's not a homogeneous march altogether.
I think there's 4 different groups in total, although Hamas are not officially a group, obviously.
Well, they are infiltrators. Nevertheless, we cannot stop with no one can stop the Hamas infiltrators coming into the march. And we have the EDL
absolutely.
as well marching.
No, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just highlighting it. Yep.
But the overgeneralization of the protest march as a hate march is not fully giving a clear picture of what's going on in the march as we see.
Yeah.
So that's the first point I'm raising.
No, I think it's a legitimate point. I think it's an overstatement.
Now, the second point is what Suella Braverman has to understand as Home Secretary is that she's a Home Secretary of the whole nation. And being in a responsible position, in a senior cabinet position, it's her responsibility to hold things together rather than being like an activist who is working in such a way that she is challenging many.
Neil, you make
even the Prime Minister.
You make a very fair point, and Claire Purcell, the former advisor to the Home Office, quite a senior role, basically said she shouldn't be a commentator, which is the same thing that you're saying. But I just put the same point to you that I put to her, is that whilst I don't think there's a silent majority of the population who necessarily agree with her premise that the police are biased, there is a very large group of people who do. And polling has shown that. Can I just make this quick point?
Yes, of course.
Doesn't it actually help if a politician does voice publicly that grievance that many people have, that concern many people have? Because then at least they feel they're listened to, and it might even take some of the steam out of it.
Well, I thought that's what the opposition party was meant to be doing, but it's very unclear as to why the Conservative Party has so many divisions going on for many, many decades, as we know.
Yeah.
And that it's becoming to a point that the Conservative Party is not able to run the country because of such divisions going on a high.
I think that's a legitimate claim to make. Yeah.
Another point I was just going to put forward here is that there is a concern as well that what we're seeing here in the situation with Israel and the Palestinian situation as we see, Armistice Day, as I understand, was a day of truce and a day of peace and a day of bringing...
Well, it's a day of recollection.
A recollection after World War I. Now, there is nothing happening as such. Nothing like that is happening in Israel. The war is still continuing, and we have to figure out that who is Israel really? Has Israel got themselves off the mark in response to?
Right.
Are they responding to Hamas, or are they attacking innocent Palestinian people? Now, I am very concerned that Hamas is such a organization, terrorist organization, that it is actually using the IDF, Israeli Defense Force, as an instrument to attack the Palestinian people. It's playing into their hands, and that's a major concern.
Can I ask you, because I've got to go to another call, but tell me, what's your background? May I ask? Because I think you're speaking very eloquently about this. I don't necessarily entirely buy every premise. I think it's a good discussion to have. But what's your background? Are you just well read on the subject, or have you been, I don't know, military or whatever?
Well, my background, I'm a citizen like everyone else.
Okay, no, it's just that I think, you know, you've articulated some very good points. I'm not trying to catch you out or anything, and I welcome the call very much indeed. I have got my next guest lined up.
I'm a Conservative member.
Okay, well, I could make so many comments about that, but I'll just get a tirade of abuse if I said that, so we'll leave it at that. But thank you very much indeed, Neil, for calling. But your point, you were read out. There you go. Right, let's take Sarah in West Sussex. Hello, Sarah.
Oh, hello, Nick. Thanks very much for taking my
Sorry
call.
I couldn't take it earlier, but you're on the air now.
Okay. I've got a number of things that I was wanting to actually say. You had a question earlier as to who was to blame for the situation today, and I think that sits squarely with Rowley. I know he's knighted, but I just feel that the man's decision-making is so poor, and if his officers are actually following him, they can't help it, but I'm sure there are a lot of them who must be thinking, they must just be shaking their heads. But let's look at language. You just had a previous guest on who is talking, you know, obviously about the different cultures and ideologies that we've actually got at the moment. We constantly talked, the media, last week leading up to today, about banning that march. Let's start at the top. There is a right to protest. It is not an absolute right.
No, that's absolutely established. You're right.
Right. And therefore, you have to apply and submit that application to the police. The police do not rubber stamp that. Therefore, you may not get your protest on the day, on the venue, at the time.
Or on the route. Yes.
Exactly. You may not get any of those things. So whichever I don't know what to even say. Whoever took those applications and didn't realise about the date or the other venues that were other events that were actually going on in London today, and how much that would actually stretch the Met Police. I know that the City of London Police are slightly different and they deal with the Lord Mayor's show, but even so, that would be stretching resources. Then, of course, we've had to sit back and watch policing by inaction. We've had police watch somebody deface a statue and say, "Oh, could you not do that?" It's just,
Sarah,
you know.
I'm going to say two things to you, if I may, because I didn't want to cut you off. First of all, just Mark Rowley, he'd probably say he was justified today because there hasn't been much violence. I just put that there. I just put that there. No, don't get cross with me. I'm just putting it there.
No.
My second point to you is, I don't know what you do. I don't know anything about your background, but very clear. Why don't you stand for Parliament?
Oh my God! Do you know, you're not the only person who's actually said that to me. But anyway, that aside, I just think that where Mark Rowley might be able to say there wasn't that much violence, because what we saw was two-tier policing.
Yes,
that is what we saw.
Yes, that is definitely a strong view. A lot of people believe that, and I understand why they do. And I think also we've got long memories of what happened in the past. Listen, Sarah, thank you so much for your call.
All right.
I hope you feel you've had a really good say.